Normal looking photos with incredible backstories. Lena Medina gave birth at 5 years old, making her the youngest mother in recorded history. Her parents took her to the hospital when they saw an increasing abdominal size that they were worried was a tumor. The doctor quickly found that she was in her 7th month of pregnancy. 6 weeks later, Lena gave birth by C-section to a 6-pound baby boy named Gerardo, which was also the name of the doctor who helped her. The doctors found that her body had fully matured through a rare condition called precocious puberty. One doctor in a detailed report on her case said that she had her first menstrual cycle at 8 months old. Lena's father was arrested on suspicion of child abuse but was later let go due to lack of evidence, and the father was never identified. Gerardo was raised believing that Lena was his sister until at 10 years old he found out that she was his mother. Gerardo passed away at the age of 40 due to bone marrow disease, but Lena is still alive at 88 years old. Follow for more.
Let's see if you have Aphidiophobia. I'm going to show you 5 photos. If you feel too uncomfortable to make it to the 5th photo, then you could have Aphidiophobia. So let's go. Number 1. Feeling uncomfortable yet? And how about this? Nearly there. Last one. If those photos made you feel uncomfortable, then you could have Aphidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes. Follow now to see if you can make it through the next phobia test. This is why you should never put off going to the dentist. Patrick Lawler tried everything to get rid of his toothache. He tried painkillers, ice cream, but nothing seemed to help. The pain became excruciating, so he finally visited the dentist. The X-ray would reveal the source of the pain, but also cause him to break down in tears. Because unknown to Patrick, he had a 4-inch nail embedded in his skull. The 23-year-old construction worker, whilst using a nail gun, had accidentally fired the nail into his mouth. After a successful 4-hour operation, the surgeons found that the nail had plunged 1.5 inches directly into his brain. Even his doctors said, if you're going to have a nail on the brain, then that's where you want it to be. He's the luckiest guy ever.
Here are more dogs that'll send you the dog backwards. I don't care how confident you are. Once upon a time, a zoo in China tried to pass off a dog as an African lion. It didn't last long and they were surely wrong, but squint at a Tibetan Mastiff and you can see where they were coming from. They both have the personality of a plush toy and the mentality to G-check a fully grown wolf that gets out of line, although these ones are kind of small, they just might be coyotes. But if you're not ready to handle a wolf like this, you ain't ready to match up with a Mastiff. It's a furry weapon of mass destruction with roots in the Himalayas, and they're one of the oldest breeds of dogs. At 140 pounds of fluffy fur coat, the woofy mammoth will ruin you physically and financially. It's a Mastiff that'll have you mad stiff. Rigor mortis. You are not beating a Dogo Argentino. Great dog to have, highly intelligent, very loyal, a real dog's dog. Horrible dog to have beef with. The Flex of Argentina was bred to hunt wild boars and peccaries, and a butt-naked pale ape would be nothing. One Dogo murked a mountain lion that was threatening his 2 human girls. Same dog that'll read your kids a bedtime story. I honestly think the average man would get his cookies taken by a Rhodesian Ridgeback. Again, intelligent, independent, and loyal. They'll fully love you to death. The thing is, someone would have to die. The South African ace was bred to clear farmlands of boars and baboons, but the biggest flex is having lion hunting on their resume. Anyone who's owned one will swear by how sweet they are, but diabetes proves that sweets aren't for everyone. The wrong person will lose a foot. And really, what are we talking about? Y'all would get folded by this dog.
The UK government has just announced that they will be approving a multi-million-pound geoengineering experiment to dim the sun. Is it not dim enough already? So the British government's Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARIA, is about to drop £50 million into experiments that aim to reflect more sunshine back into space in order to slow the effects of global warming. Now, to do this, one idea is to inject aerosols like sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere so that the tiny particles reflect the sunlight. Another idea is to brighten clouds over the ocean by using ships to spray sea salt into the air to enlarge them. And a third idea is to seed certain types of clouds to allow more of Earth's heat to escape into space. Now, I don't need to tell you guys that trying to artificially alter the climate is highly controversial. However, the lead scientist said that these experiments are on a very small scale, no toxic substances will be released, and that they have strong requirements about the reversibility of effects if any. They're likening it to when a big volcano erupts. They often blast tiny particles into the stratosphere that blocks some sunlight, and in some cases it actually cools the planet slightly for a year or two. What they're trying to do is somewhat imitate this, but in a controlled way. However, no matter how careful they are, it is not without risks or uncertainties. In fact, in January 2022, over 60 academics published an open letter calling for a ban on developing or deploying solar geoengineering. So the question is, are we at a point with climate change where drastic measures like this need to be taken, or should this be stopped immediately?
I'm finna give you 8 facts about the T-Rex that proved he had to go. He was like King Von and nature had to get him up out of here. It had padded feet, so it did not matter how big it was. If it was hunting you, it was silent. They had better eyesight than eagles, and y'all know eagles can see for miles. It was the largest land carnivore ever. That means it was eating meat, bro, Paul. Had an extremely high IQ. I heard some people say it was like as smart as a bamboo, and I heard someone say he has an IQ of 140. That's more than me. There's a high chance they hunted in groups, so just imagine like 10 of these just trying to hunt you down, bro. They had such a good scent. It was like 100 bloodhounds, so you was not escaping him. He could smell you for miles. They had the strongest bite force of any animal alive, bro. That is crazy. They could run up to 37 miles per hour, and that does not seem that fast, but all that means is it's gonna catch you every time. And I'm gonna give you an extra 2 more. 1, they were most likely cannibals and were eating each other. And 2, a new study showed that T-Rexes are probably 70% bigger than we thought.
Let's see if you have Aphidiophobia. I'm going to show you 5 photos. If you feel too uncomfortable to make it to the 5th photo, then you could have Aphidiophobia. So let's go. Number 1. Feeling uncomfortable yet? And how about this? Nearly there. Last one. If those photos made you feel uncomfortable, then you could have Aphidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes. Follow now to see if you can make it through the next phobia test.
One of Jeffrey Epstein's victims was just found dead, and she allegedly took her own life. This was Virginia Giuffre, and she played an instrumental part in helping bring Epstein's crimes to light. And just today, she was found dead only weeks after being hit by a vehicle and claiming she had only a few days left to live. This was the photo that she shared on her social media after her accident, and her cryptic post alarmed people. So Virginia is deeply tied into the entire Epstein story. She was a victim of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's early on, and she was actually recruited into their sex trafficking ring at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. She was approached while she was working there by Ghislaine Maxwell, and eventually found herself being trafficked by her and Epstein. Now, Virginia's most infamous accusations were leveled against Prince Andrew from England, and she claimed that she was forced to do things with him when she was just 17. She also made a lot of different allegations about a lot of different powerful men, but we'll save those for another time. Virginia dedicated her life after coming out with all of this information to fighting and advocating for victims of child sexual abuse and sex trafficking. And back in 2019, just one day after court documents were unsealed involving Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia Giuffre, that was the day when Epstein was found dead in his prison cell. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. Obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with Virginia's family, but this is just absolutely horrific and shocking news.
This Bigfoot story just might make you believe part 2. So our boy Mike was really scared. He was pretty confident that whatever was looking at him from the woods wasn't any type of creature he'd ever seen before. And that's when the animal let out a roar. Mike said it sounded like a lion. And almost immediately after the roar, he heard a loud whistle noise from about 100 feet to his right. The creature in front of him stared off in that direction. And then it too made the same exact whistling sound. And then the animal stared right back at Mike. It was as if the two animals were communicating with each other. And then suddenly, another creature that looked just like the one staring at Mike stepped out of the woods. So there were 2 huge ape-like creatures standing like humans staring at Mike. And that's when he took off to his car. As he was running, he looked over his shoulder and saw that one of the animals was chasing him. It was easily just as fast as Mike, but it didn't attack him, it just kept running after him. Mike made it to his car, got inside, and looked out the window. Both of the animals had followed him and were staring at him. He drove off and made it home safely.
So a question I get asked a lot is, how do slugs make love? And the real question is, how don't they? And the answer is normally. So as you know, sea slugs are like boneless snails. They're nudibranchs, they're gastropod mollusks, or as you know, sea slugs. This one's a Spanish dancer, was in Finding Nemo. They come in many colors. And they also come in many colors, and in a second I will explain. Sea slugs carry both teams' equipment, they pitch and catch, but of course, they can't just do it to themselves. Sometimes two slugs will exchange the nectar of nativity to each other and head on their way. Some, like the leopard slug, will suspend themselves in midair off a string of slime and intertwine themselves while exchanging baby batter. The reason they're upside down is the leopard slug's little slugger is so big and girthy, they literally need gravity to help the slug's baby arm fall out of its head. I am the first member of my bloodline to say that. Oh, and that blue stuff's exactly what you think. Some slugs have two Johnsons, one for what you'd expect and the other to stab their partner right between the eyes to inject a substance believed to brainwash the slug into accepting its love juice in particular and not someone else's. Traumatic insemination is the name, and that's not the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes two slugs get their Twizzlers stuck together and the only way out is for one to chew the member off the other. It happens so often there's a term for it, and pray your night never has to end on some apophilation. Or you know, and no one asked me to do this.
Doubt a lot of people do, but does anybody recognize these names? Michelle Gusset, Lori Farmer, and Denise Milner. These were the Girl Scouts who were attending Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma when something went very wrong. One of the counselors reported hearing this strange and kind of low guttural noise in the woods during that night. And by the morning of June 13th, 1977, all three of these girls were found missing from their tent. The three of them were later found bludgeoned under a tree. You really have to understand, the county had never seen something like this, ever. Something so gruesome, and all three of these girls being assaulted. Then police found something strange. In a cave outside of the camp, there were key pieces of evidence as well as two pictures. Pictures that were traced back to their development and led to only one man, Gene Leroy Hart. He was a horribly violent man with a dark history of assault. Police closed in on him, and although there's evidence he was involved, he is eventually acquitted of the charges.
These are 8 horrifying facts that will probably keep you up at night. When Apollo 11 landed, it only had 20 seconds of remaining fuel. 4 months ago, a deceased rapper by the name Gunu had his corpse on stage while fans were partying around his body. The average person wastes 5 months of their lives waiting for red lights to turn green. Cruise ships have morgues, just in case someone, during the trip. If you have red eyes after swimming, it's not from chlorine. It's from the chlorine mixing with other people's urine. The furthest part of the ocean from land is Point Nemo. If you get stuck there, you're not coming back. Sunburn are your cells dying to avoid being cancerous. Most laugh tracks and shows are people from the 50s, which means you're hearing the laughter of dead people. Yeah, there's a lot more, like for part 14.
Her parents took her life after she refused to marry her cousin. 18-year-old Saman Abbas lived with her parents in northern Italy but were originally from Pakistan. She chose not to wear a head covering in public and would also post photos of her kissing her boyfriend in public, and this would make her parents very upset. In 2020, Saman's parents wanted her to travel to Pakistan for an arranged marriage with her cousin, but she refused. To get away from her parents, she lived for several months under the protection of social services but was tricked into going back after she received messages from them. Once Saman returned home, she mysteriously disappeared. On April 29th of 2021, CCTV footage captures 3 members of the family walking with spades, a crowbar, and a blue bag. The following day, separate footage shows Saman leaving the house with her parents, and she was never seen again. Her body was eventually recovered near a farmhouse that wasn't too far away from her parents' home. An autopsy revealed she had suffered a broken neck bone from being strangled. Once Saman's family had unalived her, they immediately left Italy and went to Pakistan so they wouldn't be caught. Her uncle, who was also involved, was detained in Paris in 2021. Father was arrested in 2022, and at the time her mother was on the run. In court, Saman's father claimed that he was innocent and that him and his wife only followed her that night because it was late and they were unhappy and they just wanted to see where she was going. The court convicted both parents and they were sentenced to life in prison.
These facial reconstructions helped identify victims, and they're downright creepy. In 2015, a body was discovered along the I-40 highway near Hinton, Oklahoma. The body was so badly decomposed that a forensic artist created this reconstruction hoping somebody would recognize her. She was identified over a year later, and her killer pleaded guilty in 2017 and was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In 1994, a hiker stumbled across a skull near Windy Point, Colorado. These reconstructions were made, but the case remained cold for nearly 30 years. She became known as Windy Point Jane Doe. It wasn't until March of this year that she was identified as Susan Hobbs of Washington State. This reconstruction was done on a body that was found in Salem, New Hampshire in August of 1968. The unidentified body had 4 gunshot wounds. It wasn't until 2019 when John Doe was identified as Vermont resident Winston Morris.
Yesterday, 8 family members were found shot to death inside of a home in the small town of Enoch, Utah. They were all members of the same family, and police have determined that it was a murder-suicide. According to authorities, the bodies of 5 children and 3 adults were found inside the home suffering from gunshot wounds after police conducted a welfare check. Police determined that the father, 42-year-old Michael Haidt, shot his 5 children, his wife, his mother-in-law, and then himself. According to authorities, just 2 weeks ago on December 21st, Michael's wife filed for divorce, and ever since his mother-in-law had been supporting her. The children were ages 17 to 4 years old. Enoch, Utah is about 245 miles from Salt Lake City and is a really tight-knit community. City councilmen and other residents of the community are in complete shock and have described the Haidts as a wonderful family who were very well respected and well known in the area.
A 23-year-old Florida woman was posing as a 14-year-old girl to meet up with little boys. This is 23-year-old Alyssa Ann Zinger. She was first arrested in November for at least 30 acts with a middle school boy, and then sending explicit Snapchats to many more middle schoolers. Her persona was a 14-year-old homeschooled girl. She communicated with all of her victims through Snapchat. She got hit with a ton of charges, mainly CP charges, and that's on top of assault charges. Interestingly enough, her and the victim that she was with got caught shoplifting at Nordstrom in July. She lied to the police about her identity. She was born in 2001. She said she was born in 2009 to them, but they had been investigating her for over a year now. They found out she had been lying after reviewing her school and employment records and contacted her employer at Publix in Tampa. Then 3 months later after that, a victim came forward about Alyssa Zinger's crimes. If convicted, she faces 146 years, so basically life in prison. And I believe she has 7 different charges against her with 12 counts. If you're from Tampa, let me know if you heard about this. I'm from Tampa. I'm just hearing about this. I believe she was arrested last week, so makes sense. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This one piece of evidence has changed everything for the Fox Hollow Farm case. Herb Baumeister was said to be the man behind taking the lives of multiple men and scattering their remains across his farm. Thousands of bone fragments were found throughout his farm and property. This is Mark Goodyear, and everyone thinks that he had a role in it and then blamed it on Herb. Here's why.
This is one of the riddles that Mark has sent me. I am not a victim. I was never attacked. I am not a murderer. Exactly what am I? Tell me what I am. Not an accomplice, not a victim, never attacked. What am I?
But look at these creepy messages that he was sending investigators, almost teasing that he had something to do with it. At first, he lied and he said that he was a victim and he was the only one that survived this serial killer. And people were like, that's weird, how come you're the only one that survived? Then he actually admitted that he was seeing Mark for 2 years and that he faked being a victim in order for them to get a search warrant to investigate his house. Something's not right, folks. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm gonna have a part 5, 6, 7 because there's so much about this case, so follow and stay tuned.
Top 5 scariest videos caught on camera inside of a morgue. A morgue is a place where bodies are stored before they are buried or cremated. Doing all of this in one part, so make sure to like and follow so you don't miss an upload. Number 5, the end of the hall. In this video, a couple people are sleeping on the floor inside of a hospital. At around 2:17 a.m., you spot a figure at the end of the hallway that may not seem human. Take a look. Number 4, The Awaken. In this video, a police officer gets a call from an employee saying some lights are flickering inside of the building. The officer responds and says he'll go check it out. He walks down the hallway and this is what he captured. Number 3, the gurney. In this video, you will see a bunch of medical equipment. You then will see a couple of gurneys move on their own. Number 2, the spirit. In this video, a woman is laying on a stretcher and you can see on camera what appears to be her soul lifting out of her body. Before we get to number 1, make sure to follow my Instagram. I'm going to be posting some unreleased videos of the haunted hotel I just stayed in. The Instagram is AustinVro. I will see you guys there. Number 1, the doctor. A doctor recently took his own life inside of this hospital. This video is from a visitor inside of the hospital who was just roaming around the hallway trying to kill some time. That is until he realizes what he just captured on camera. The crazy thing about this video is once he showed the video to some of the staff, they informed him that that is the same room where the doctor took his life. If you guys want to see more content like this, make sure to like and follow, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.
Another cold case has been solved after 42 years thanks to advanced DNA technology and a best friend that never gave up fighting for justice. 14-year-old Deanna Lynn Johnson went to a party in her own neighborhood in November 1982, and she never returned home. This was not like her at all, so her mother reported her missing, but unfortunately the next day her body was found just across the street on a set of railroad tracks. She had been strangled and beaten to death. DNA was found under her fingernails, but at the time it could not be used to find her killer. In the initial investigation, 17-year-old Marvin Ray Markle was identified as a suspect. He was a peer of Deanna's and he was at the same party that night. But despite investigators' best efforts to prove he committed the murder, they could not, and Deanna's case went cold. Marvin Markle popped back up on investigators' radar in 2004 when they discovered he was a suspect in another homicide, the 2001 murder of 41-year-old Shirley Ann Pratt. But it would take another 9 years for an arrest to be made in Shirley's case. In 2013, Markle was arrested though, and he was charged with the murder of Shirley Pratt. That case went to trial in 2014, and he was ultimately convicted and sentenced to 80 years in prison for Shirley's death. And during all of this, investigators were still looking at Markle for Deanna's murder. They went to the trial for Shirley's murder and tried to collect any evidence they could against Markle. And finally, in 2017, they had enough. On January 24th, 2017, police charged Marvin Markle, who was already incarcerated at Kern Valley State Prison for Shirley's murder, with the murder of Deanna Johnson. He pleaded not guilty, but everybody was sure that he was the one who killed Deanna. Her childhood best friend, Mary Borchers, said it was widely known among her peers that Markle, who was known as Ziggy, had been responsible for Deanna's murder. Mary said, quote, "Everybody knew in our minds it's always been Ziggy, 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 but no one ever came straight out and made it factual." Mary Borchers has spearheaded the pursuit of justice for many years, playing a pivotal role in gathering evidence against Markle. The retired detective who worked on the initial investigation said about Mary, quote, "I give Mary a lot of credit. I'm retired and there's nothing I can do about it. She went to court every day. She was trying to help the parents and make sure Markle got what's coming to him." Since Markle pleaded not guilty, he went to a jury trial, which lasted 3 weeks. But this week, 59-year-old Markle has been convicted of Deanna's murder. Finally, after 42 years, Deanna Johnson has justice. Deanna was a bubbly, giggly young woman who put others before herself. Those who loved her are feeling relief that her killer has finally been caught. Rest in peace, Deanna.
Her headless body was found in a river. 39 years later, she would finally be identified. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the Jane Doe named Millie. Viewer discretion is advised. It was June 20th, 1984, in the Spokane River, which was near the Spokane Falls Community College. The body of a woman was found floating in the river. The young woman was missing her hands, her feet, and her head. The coroner determined that this body had been dismembered pretty crudely, like possibly with an axe or sawed apart. It wasn't really professionally done. Like the person didn't really know what they were doing. They believed the woman had been dead for sometime around 48 to 72 hours, but there was no identification. And once they put the information out to the public, nobody came forward to state that, their loved one was missing. They took DNA, but back in 1984, DNA technology wasn't really a big thing yet. On April 19th, 1998, a human skull was found. It was found, near the corner of Sherman and 7th Street in a vacant lot, also in Spokane, Washington. They would do this recreation of the person's skull, because immediately they weren't sure if it was a man or a woman. But eventually, through further examination, they determined that this was a woman's skull. They came up with another composite drawing of what this woman may have looked like, and eventually they would piece together that this skull belonged to the body that was found in 1984. They were able to determine that through DNA and the angle of the saw marks done to dismember her body. However, it still did not help them identify her. Nobody came forward to state that, yeah, that's my loved one. By 2020, 2021 or so, they came up with this computerized rendering of the woman, and still it yielded nothing. And finally, that's when Othram Labs got involved. And that's when they did the DNA sequencing, building a DNA profile, which then they could use through familial DNA. And eventually they tracked her DNA to a family and finally found out who she was. It was a 24-year-old woman named Ruth Waymeyer. This is a photo from her during high school. It's pretty much the only photo that's ever been released. She had been married twice. She did live in Spokane, Washington at the time of her disappearance. It was reported that her and her husband were living a vagrant lifestyle, and she had been estranged from any of her remaining family members for quite some time. Her second husband, who she was still married to when she vanished, never reported her missing. And so that obviously became a giant red flag to police. Her husband's name was Trampus Vaughn, but he died in 2017 before they identified who she was. He is considered a prime suspect in this, mainly because he never reported her missing, and he just continued on with his life. Ruth's first husband has been very cooperative with police, and while he hasn't officially been ruled out as a suspect, they don't believe he had anything to do with this. If you have information about her murder, please call 509-456-2233.